If you watched that video on my second channel, I used to be a nerdfighter. Yes, glasses wearing, DFTBA saying, Tumblr scrolling, Project for Autumn watching, vlog brother, comment leaving kind. And if you weren't around during this era of BookTube, you need to understand John Green wasn't just an author, he was the author. He was YA's own Marvel Cinematic Universe, but more banter about otters and less risk of being Thanos at the end. The early days of BookTube basically ran on Nerdfighter energy. Everybody had a copy of Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, The Fort Now Stars, in a frame like it was some YouTuber starter pack item for your epic quest into the internet. And honestly, I was right there with them. I still have my copies. I had a pizza t-shirt, and I was fully subscribed to that Green Brothers particular brand of fast-talking sincerity. And recently, for reasons that probably say something about my current mental state, I decided to reread his books, and it was an experience. Welcome to this episode of The Board Book Geek. We're just going to get into it, and I'm picking on 3 here, because I feel like 3 of them might just be the 3 that stuck out, for reasons I'll get into. Let's start with Paper Towns. On the reread, this is still my favourite. Let's be real, it's still my favourite. I love the road trip element. I love the themes about people being more complicated than the versions we make up in our heads. And I appreciate the ending doesn't give you a neat romantic payoff. But here is where my maybe 30-something cynicism kicks in. The dialogue sometimes feels like it was written by someone who hadn't been a teenager for a very long time, which, spoiler, it was. And it's not that the lines are bad, in fact they're too good. Too snappy, too self-aware. Every character, whether they're the main love interest or some guy whose entire personality is owned a tuba, sounds like they're auditioning for some indie movie. It's like watching Dawson's Creek. That's a good way to describe the dialogue, but every word is some kind of quirky metaphor about suburbia. I don't think we can go into this too much longer without mentioning the John Green formula. Here's the thing. When you start to reread, it's where I started to get frustrated. Once you notice the formula, you can't unsee it. Quirky, cerebral protagonist, who's usually deeply obsessed with a girl who mostly exists as a concept in his head. Said girl is quirky, mysterious, and has a habit of disappearing, physically or emotionally or through the tragic nature of the plot. The plot itself is half coming-of-age story and half a salvager hunt for clues about said girl's inner world. Everything ends with a big philosophical conversation about the nature of love, death, and the universe. Someone cries. Once you've read 2 or 3, the beats are so similar you start feeling like you're in your own paper town situation, chasing the ideas of a book that isn't really there. Fort Now Stars. I will give full credit where credit is due to the Fort Now Stars. It holds up surprisingly well, despite the formula. But having known people and lost people to cancer, I can say he captures that experience. The humour, the pain, the awkward normalcy of it all, frighteningly well. Like on a level that's kind of terrifying? That's a good word for it. It's also probably the most emotionally honest book, even with all the banter and metaphors. There's a rawness here that feels less like John Green the brand and more like John Green the person. I'm actually surprised how accurate the emotions felt in this. I don't know if he was writing from personal experience in this one, but my god, did it feel personal to me. But also, can we talk about how every single character in this book is like the wittiest person alive? Like, if you put these teenagers in a Marvel movie, they would win the quip-off every time. I don't think we can talk about John Green without talking about Tumblr. Tumblr. Looking for Alaska was Tumblr's sacred text for about 5 years. If you were there, you will remember. You couldn't scroll for 10 seconds without seeing lines like, if people were rain, I was drizzle and she was a hurricane. Usually superimposed on a stock photo of a cloud. At the time, we thought it was peak literature. Now, with distance, I can appreciate the emotional honesty, but man, some of it is just teenage melodrama in capital letters. Like Paper Towns had the manic pixie dream girl conversation in it, but Looking for Alaska is the manic pixie dream girl conversation. This is probably the most dated in vibes overall, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's very much a certain moment at a certain point in history. The thing about reading these books as a teenager was they felt real. They were smart and dynamic in ways that made your own life feel smart and dynamic. Reading them now, it's a bit like finding your old Tumblr blog. You love the person you were, but you're also like, no, no, who is that? And honestly, that's not a bad thing, because of all my snark here, I think John Green books meant a lot to a lot of people. They meant a lot to me. That's part of the reason BookTube existed in the first place, let's be honest. But also it felt like just seeing a version of yourself you don't quite know anymore. And I'm so glad there's a whole generation of kids finding these books again. And I think that's very, very important. I think we all need our John Green moment when we're young. Love him or hate him, you cannot say that he didn't influence a lot of young people. And also fashion, but that's a whole different discussion. So yeah, I definitely think that Paper Towns is still my favourite. I like the vibe, I like the road trip element. The Fault Now Stars still hits, and Looking for Alaska feels like a Tumblr post that escaped into the wild. And the rest, well, they have the same DNA. The quirks are all there, the plot beats are all there, the beautifully overthought metaphors, it's all there in glaring detail. But this is where people might be surprised. I think that's okay. Because it's okay to outgrow books. They were exactly what what we, what us, whoever needed at the time. And I mean that. I'm actually surprised. It was a snapshot into a very different life, a different world. So yeah, I think give them a chance. If you're young, I don't really have a young audience, but you know what? If you know some young people, yes, we're old enough to call them young people now, maybe introduce them to his work. Maybe they'll find what they need in it too. And will forever respect the man for never giving us the Paper Town cinematic universe, but that's a whole other thing. And here's to us, teenagers, kids, when we were young, when we were still figuring out, before the world kind of took something from us, maybe. Let's be real. Anyway, I will leave this here and I'll talk to you guys in another episode, but also, and I'm going to say this out loud and proud, like, sub, and tell me what you think in the comments below. Because I want to know, I want that conversation. If you want a deeper conversation, check out my Substack, Patreon, or YouTube channel memberships for exclusive content you'll never get anywhere else. Like I said, here's to us. Here's to the versions of us that only exist in photographs, cringy Tumblr posts, and ancient YouTube videos that we're maybe a little embarrassed about. Talk to you guys later.